Today, we are looking at the intersection of hard science, global wanderlust, and nostalgic music through the lens of Justin Neway's fascinating track, Take the Road.
It really is a remarkable piece of work because, it defies how we typically categorize human output.
Right. We like our neat little boxes.
Exactly. We have this ingrained habit of separating the analytical brain from the creative brain. But what makes this fascinating is how Neway doesn't abandon his highly technical scientific background to make music. He actively synthesizes it with this raw, heartfelt acoustic storytelling.
Yeah, the perfect blend. And we have an incredibly rich stack of sources to guide us through this today. We are pulling from the original lyrics of Take the Road, plus Justin Neway's own personal written commentary detailing the track's origins.
Which is so valuable, getting his direct perspective.
Oh, absolutely. We're also looking at his biographical records and some very telling listen reviews. So our mission today is to uncover the mechanics behind this transformation.
Right, how the logistics become the art.
Exactly. How do you take the mundane logistics of moving for work and turn them into a sweeping sonic landscape? And crucially, what does his methodology teach you about following your own internal compass? Okay, let's unpack this.
Well, to really understand the architecture of the song, you have to look at the pressure cooker of variables Neway was sitting in during that 1986 drive.
Set the scene for us.
Yeah. So the catalyst for this music wasn't a relaxing retreat in the woods. It was a highly practical, anxiety-inducing necessity. He was undertaking this solo migration from Massachusetts all the way to the San Francisco Bay Area.
Which, in 1986, is a very different beast than it is today.
Oh, entirely. Before cell phones, before GPS, it's literally just a man alone in a car watching an entire continent roll by out the window.
Just physical maps and whatever cassette tapes you brought with you.
Right. And he was driving toward a daunting new career in the burgeoning biotech industry, all while carrying the heavy emotional weight of that temporary separation from the absolute love of his life, his wife, Julie.
It's a lot to process. And when you look at his resume up to that point, we are talking about a man born in South Africa.
Right. He attended Pretoria Boys High School.
Yeah, which is actually where he picked up the guitar at age 14, by the way.
Yeah.
But then from there, he lived in France, then Canada, earning a bachelor's in microbiology and a master's in biochemistry from the University of Calgary. And he caps it off with a PhD in biochemistry from the University of Illinois. He doesn't just write abstractly about, missing his wife. He anchors his emotional state to very specific chronological data points along his route.
Yeah, the geographical markers.
Right. The verses physically track his progression. He starts by leaving behind the changing colors of the trees in New England. Then he documents the winding rivers and gray clouds of the Pennsylvania hills.
Moving right along the map.
Yeah, he moves on to the cornfields of Kentucky rolling by on his left, and eventually he is riding down the road from Kansas City, watching the golden wheat land stretch out. He is practically logging his coordinates.
He is treating the American landscape as the scaffolding for his narrative. But, knowing his coordinates is only the raw data. The brilliant part of this track is how he translates those physical miles into audio waves.
Right. It's not just a spoken word diary.
No, not at all. He isn't just reciting a travelogue. He is actively engineering an environment for the listener.
I really want to dig into how he actually pulled that off musically, because the instrumentation choices are incredibly distinct. Like, he plays a left-handed nylon-stringed acoustic guitar, right? But if I'm looking at his list of influences, people like Gordon Lightfoot, John Denver, Glenn Campbell, Don McLean, Simon and Garfunkel, these are mostly acoustic purists.
Right, very traditional folk sounds.
Yeah, and you've got people like Mary Chapin Carpenter, Beth Nielsen Chapman, Dan Fogelberg. But Neway doesn't stop with just the acoustic guitar. He takes that traditional folk foundation and layers it heavily with 1980s retro synthesizers and these orchestral elements.
And that layering is a very deliberate structural choice. It creates a psychological effect we can call ambient transportation.
Ambient transportation. Okay, break that down for me.
Let's look at the mechanics of those instruments. A nylon string guitar is organic. It has warmth, subtle imperfections, and it inherently sounds traditional.
It sounds human.
It represents his humanity, his past, and the romantic longing for his wife. It represents the future, the technology, and the high-tech biotech career he is driving toward in Silicon Valley.
Oh, wow. So by blending them.
By layering them together, the music physically embodies his dual identity.
So what does this all mean? Like, practically speaking, how does that combination actually force the listener to feel the momentum of the road trip?
Well, he uses syncopated tambourine taps, rhythmic clapping, and these rapidly strummed background guitar chords.
Oh, so it actually sounds like movement.
Right. It mimics the physical vibration of tires on asphalt. And then he scores the actual geography.
Scoring the geography. I love that phrasing.
Yeah, as the lyrics pass through New England, he introduces a flute. When he hits the southern Midwest, you suddenly hear a dulcimer.
Which is an instrument with harmonic resonances deeply tied to the Appalachian region.
Exactly. Culturally, it roots you right there in the Midwest. And then, as he crosses the Great Plains, he mixes in the sound of a train horn.
The train horn is such a brilliant touch. Your brain automatically calculates distance and movement. You aren't just listening to a song at that point. Your sensory memory is tricked into feeling like you are sitting in the passenger seat staring out the window.
You're right there with him. And all of this builds toward a recurring musical motif he engineered, which he refers to as his mountain theme. It's this massive multi-tone synthesizer rise that comes in overlapping sections, and it finishes with a bright, triumphant trumpet flourish. He designed it specifically to sound like sound waves physically echoing off spectacular, jagged mountain peaks. He is capturing the massive, looming expectation of the road ahead.
That makes a lot of sense.
Think about it. When you start a drive from the East Coast to the West Coast, you aren't just thinking about the first 100 miles.
Right, you're looking at the whole map in your head.
You are psychologically confronting the scale of the entire North American continent. The sheer size of that synth intro represents the grandeur of the landscape he knows he has to cross.
So it's the destination calling him forward before he even leaves the driveway.
Exactly.
Okay, so the sonic momentum makes total sense now. The sheer intention behind every note is wild.
Yeah.
But here's where it gets really interesting, though. He spends all this time carefully engineering this sweeping, cinematic, deeply romantic architecture.
Right.
And right in the middle of verse 2, he drops a lyric that is so hyper-specific, it completely derails the romantic assumption. He sings, "And the girl in Cincinnati won't be easy to forget."
Ah, yes. The infamous Cincinnati lyric.
It's so jarring if you think about it.
It really is a fantastic study in human psychology. When listeners hear a song fundamentally built around a man's longing for his wife, and then suddenly a girl in Cincinnati appears who won't be easy to forget, they immediately assume a dramatic romantic detour.
Of course they do. That's the trope.
They project a cinematic roadside encounter onto the narrative. His own friends constantly ask him to explain how that line is compatible with his lifelong devotion to Julie.
The reality behind the lyric is incredible, though, because it completely punctures that cinematic projection. It wasn't a dramatic roadside romance at a smoky diner.
Not even close.
A colleague of his had a highly qualified friend looking for a job in California. And this candidate happened to be driving south from Michigan to Florida for a wedding at the exact same time New Way was driving west.
The logistics lined up perfectly.
Yeah. They realized their routes crossed, so they coordinated to meet at the Cincinnati airport. He interviewed a job candidate over a soggy airport sandwich.
Oh.
And she was an excellent candidate, too. His team flew her out to California a few months later, hired her, and she still lives in the Bay Area today.
It's amazing.
It is purely corporate logistics. We hear the phrase, "won't be easy to forget," and our brains automatically supply a sweeping romance, when the reality was just a really solid discussion about lab protocols under fluorescent airport lighting.
It's hilarious, but look at the mechanism of why that works so well in the song. It highlights the absolute brilliance of poetic ambiguity.
Oh, definitely.
New Way could have written a clunky verse explaining that he met a great microbiologist for a networking lunch, but instead he chose to leave the line entirely ambiguous. He created a blank space.
And nature abhors a vacuum.
When an artist leaves a blank space, the audience reflexively fills it with their own memories. The listener thinks of their own fleeting, impactful encounters on the road. You know, the stranger who helped them change a tire in the rain, or the waitress they talked to at 2 a.m.
Right.
New Way took a mundane logistical event, a job interview, and through the sheer omission of detail, elevated it to the level of universal myth. He provides the scaffolding, you provide the memory.
That completely reframes the entire process of songwriting for me. He's not just documenting his trip. He is designing a vessel for the listener's own wanderlust.
Exactly.
And speaking of wanderlust, all of this forward momentum, all of this driving west is ultimately pulling him toward a massive geographical and emotional gravitational center.
Right. The entire narrative arc of the road trip and the musical tension he builds with those synthesizers, it's all designed to resolve when he finally reaches the Rocky Mountains.
Yeah, when he hits verse 4, the geography finally shifts from a blur outside the window to a permanent foundation. He sings that the mountains make their home in Colorado, that they stand alone, and crucially, that they set my spirit free.
They become the anchor.
The Rockies aren't just another scenic waypoint on the map to California. They're the actual point of the compass.
And to understand the functional gravity of the Rockies for him, you really have to look back at the timeline with Julie.
Right, their history there.
Yeah. They originally met and fell in love in the Rocky Mountains. So as he was driving through them on that solo trip in 1986, heading toward this demanding biotech job on the coast, he made a concrete promise to himself. He decided that one day he and Julie would return and anchor their lives near those mountains.
And he treated that promise like a fixed destination. 4 years after that solo drive, so 1990, they packed up and moved to rural Boulder County, Colorado.
And they've lived there ever since.
Right. They describe it as the place they feel most completely at home. And looking at the chronology of this, they will actually be celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary in 2027.
That is incredible.
It really gives the lyrics of Take the Road an immense amount of retrospective weight. When he sings the line, "The laughter in her loving eyes will lead me home to stay," it wasn't just a piece of poetic hope written in a lonely car. He was literally drafting the blueprint for his actual future.
What's fascinating here is how this story redefines the functional definition of home.
Oh yeah, how so?
Well, look at his migratory background again. He was born in South Africa, lived in France, lived in Canada, studied in Illinois, moved to Massachusetts, then California. For someone with that kind of massive global footprint, home is not where you happen to start. It is a highly intentional, chosen destination. For Niue, that destination required two specific elements intersecting: the presence of the love of his life and the undeniable grounding grandeur of nature.
And the Rocky Mountains provided the physical coordinates for both.
Precisely.
And I think that intentionality is what resonates so powerfully with people who discover the track today. Looking through the listener reviews, the reactions are so visceral.
What are people saying?
Well, one listener wrote that the song makes you want to drop everything, grab your toothbrush, and hit the road.
That's high praise.
Right. Another specifically praised the aerial imagery of the lyrics, the way he makes you feel like you are gliding over the cornfields and the mountains. And they also noted his effortless vocal pitch. People are experiencing the exact gravitational pull he felt in 1986.
It translates perfectly across the decades.
Which actually prompts a question for you, the listener. What is your personal Rocky Mountain? What is that geographic or even emotional coordinate that constantly beckons you forward, even when you are neck deep in the chaotic logistics of building a career or managing your daily life?
That introspective reaction is precisely what the song is engineered to provoke. And musically, Niue refuses to close the loop on that question.
What do you mean by that? Musically, I mean.
Well, in music theory, a song usually ends with a perfect cadence, a chord resolution that signals to your brain that the narrative is complete and the tension is resolved.
Like a musical period at the end of a sentence.
Right. But Niue doesn't do that. The track ends with a slow fade out of that majestic synthesizer-driven mountain theme. In his own commentary, he explains that this fade out is meant to imply a never-ending call.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the mountains are so massive, so permanent, that they don't cease to exist just because the song ends. You simply drive out of earshot. They are always there, always beckoning.
I love that. So, bringing all the threads together, we started with a highly analytical biochemist undertaking a stressful, literal corporate relocation in 1986. But instead of just enduring the drive, Justin Niue applied his mind to the raw materials of that journey and engineered a timeless, nostalgic anthem. He utilized left-handed nylon guitar to ground the emotion, layered retro synthesizers to represent his high-tech future, deployed dulcimers and train horns to map the physical geography, and used the memory of falling in love to chart a course that took half a century to fully realize.
It's brilliant.
He completely shatters the assumption that the scientific mind and the romantic heart operate in silos. They can actually feed each other perfectly.
Absolutely. And I think the true value of unpacking a story like this is finding the application for our own routines.
Taking it off the map and into our daily lives.
The takeaway is to completely reframe how we view our own transitions. The next time you are enduring a brutal commute, or packing boxes for a stressful job relocation, or just caught in the messy, unglamorous logistics of daily life, recognize that those moments aren't just frustrating hurdles you have to get past. Right. They are the actual raw materials for your own narrative. You possess the agency to score your own journey.
You do not have to choose between writing the technical lab report and writing the romantic love letter. You are fully allowed to author both.
So true.
And that brings us right back to the deliberate fade out at the end of the track. If the music slowly fades to represent the never-ending call of the mountains, it leaves us with a truly provocative philosophical puzzle to mull over.
Oh, what's that?
Well, if we finally navigate the chaos, if we actually arrive at our dream destination and build a life at the foot of our own personal Rockies, does that arrival actually satisfy our wanderlust?
That is the question.
Right. Or does the very act of surviving the journey permanently alter our hearing, leaving us quietly, always listening for the next call to take the road? Thank you so much for joining us. We'll catch you next time.
When those Rocky Mountains beckon me